Greetings, friends and fellow travelers, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. Today, I am trying something different. I'm doing this show on the Learn It Live platform instead of the Webinar Jam platform because there's lots of different reasons. You don't need to know about that, but I thought I'd give it a try and see how it goes. Anyway, my name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery coach, and I'm also the author of this new book. It's called A Life to Die For, Master 10 Key Skills to Transform Your Life into a Priceless Treasure. I hope you'll pick up a copy. It's available on Amazon in both print and Kindle forms. And I'm excited about it because pretty much everything I do now is related to the contents of that book, including this show. And today, we're talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart and something very, very important, I think, for all of us to consider. We're talking about mindfulness. Mindfulness is well known to be a powerful, life-affirming practice that has countless benefits in both the physical and the spiritual realms. It's an ability that we all seem to have, but not everybody knows really how to engage it or how to make it work and that sort of thing. And there's lots of different techniques for maximizing mindfulness in your life. But today we're going to look at a very particular mechanism that involves mindfulness through the body. And so we call it, guess what, embodied mindfulness. And to shed some light on this subject, I've invited a wonderful yoga teacher and wellness universe world changer to join us today. My guest is an expert certified yoga instructor, a Phoenix Rising yoga therapist and group facilitator with over 33 years of experience in body-mind healing. She infuses the age-old wisdom of yoga with the therapeutic mindfulness-based practice of Phoenix Rising yoga therapy, both in Europe and in the US, provide a unique and powerful healing experience. She believes that as long as you can breathe, you can do yoga. And I agree with that statement. She moves her students toward a life worth living, no matter what the obstacles might be. She also recognizes that life is often a balancing act. She chooses to embrace what's possible every day. So please join me in welcoming the lovely and playful Manuela Rohr to the show today. Thank you, Manuela, for joining us.
Hello, everybody. And I saw Cynthia hop on the show. Hello, David. Hello, Cynthia. Pleased to be here. Honored to be here. Happy to be here.
That's great.
Yes.
And I'm excited because you're in Germany right now, aren't you?
Yes, I'm in Germany.
And that's one of the beautiful things about this is we can be anywhere in the world and still come together and share what's really, really important to people. I love that. And so tell me a little bit about what's going on in Germany and how it is there.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I love that too. When I signed up for your show, I didn't know I would be in Germany, but really it doesn't matter as long as time is not a problem. And we are like 7 o'clock at night, which is totally cool because it's still daytime. So we have all the time in the world to connect all over the place. Germany is cold. It's winter here, but it's not as snowy as usually people think. When I grew up here, we always had snow abundance. We were always sledding and building snowmans, and it's just cold and gray, overcast, and it comes up a little bit above minus, then it rains and it's really ugly, then it goes below minus and it's slushy. It's the weather is not great, but I live in a town, in a city south of Frankfurt. It's called Speyer and it's over 2,000 years old.
Wow. It's
a very beautiful city. I mean, if I walk just out of I'm in my sister's apartment and I walk out and we have a beautiful, we have a bishop, we have cathedrals, we have towers everywhere. It's like breathtakingly beautiful, and it doesn't matter what the weather is because it's just like you walk around and you think, who all lived here? And Germans, you know.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, I remember living in London in 1999 or so. I was there for about, how long was I there? 6 months or something. And noticing how much old architecture there is in London and surrounding cities, and in fact in all of Europe. We just don't have that here in the US. I mean, everything here is, there is the Native American stuff that's been around for a long time, but most of the architecture is, maybe 300-400 years old at the most.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's always really fascinating, I think, to go to a place like that and to feel the energy of some of those older structures, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I have the same experience. I always wonder, well, I wonder who lived here, and I wonder what they did, and I wonder
Yeah.
what kind of life they had, and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And you know what I also always treasure or really cherish when I'm in Europe? It's like when you are in a city. I haven't really used a car in the last 2 weeks. I don't even have a car. If I need a car to go someplace, I take my sister's car, but I take my bike or my feet. I always walk everywhere, and everybody, no matter what age. I was in the downtown earlier and I saw an older lady. I would think she was in her 80s on the bike with her 2 grocery bags and a little basket in the back. And now it's warm here. And that's what keeps people a lot more active, because they do a lot by foot or by bike when they live in a city like this. And it's quite interesting to see that, how alert everybody is.
That's great. And that actually ties into our topic today, doesn't it? Because what they're doing is they're using their body.
Yeah.
They're getting engaged with the mechanics of their body,
Yes.
and helping to make themselves healthy. And I know when I go on a bike, for example, or when I'm walking, even when I'm just out walking my dog, I find that I tend to be more present to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I'm at home, if I'm watching TV or something, I have no sense of presence at all. I'm completely zoned out. Or if I'm in front of a computer, I tend to be a little bit zoned out with what I'm doing and not necessarily totally present to what's going on within me.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, I know you have been a yoga teacher for quite a long time now, and I think you said you've got 33 years experience of teaching yoga, which is pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about is, what was it that brought you to yoga in the first place? What was it that brought you to this path of personal growth so that you could bring your wisdom like this to people?
Yeah, thank you for asking this, because I'm always astonished myself how that happened. I came through that as a absolutely sports fanatic. All I wanted to be as a girl, and then I studied towards it, was a sports and gymnastic teacher. I wanted to perform, and I did perform. I played all kinds of competitive sports you can imagine. I was in the first women's soccer league when I was 15, and nobody had an idea that women can even play soccer. And my dad coached it, and I loved it. And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a sports and gymnastic teacher, studied for it, went to school to teach sports and gymnastic towards a curriculum, to have children grow into sporty people. That's what was my goal all along. And not long into it, when I had my first school class, it was a 3rd grade group of kids. I noticed, you have a curriculum you have to go through, and this is at the end, you have to have the kids have established a certain thing in the school plan. Like with English, it's the same thing. And I noticed the kids in the back of the line, boys, it was boys, 3-4 boys, who were always hanging in the back of the group, not performing, not picking up, not being able to climb up the ropes and everything I had on my plan. They were shy of doing this. And actually, I don't know why as a teacher, I observed the whole group, and I had seen these boys, but they kept pulling on my eye in a way that I saw them. And when I wanted to approach them to find out how I could make it easier for them, they were afraid of me. As you know, I remember I, as a kid, was always afraid of my teachers, because teachers at that time were like, you behave or you get punished for it. And this boy, that one boy, little chubbier guy, had a really red face already from working hard but never accomplishing anything. I approached him and I said, what is your problem? How can I make it easier for you? And he started to cry. And I thought, and all these other kids, the ones who were more like me, like always at top of the line, grinned at them, this type of bullying that goes on, the silent bullying. Yeah. And I kind of couldn't shake off these boys and went to the teacher classroom for lunch break and thought about how can I make it work that these boys don't feel so behind.
Mhm.
Somehow they caught me in a way that I still don't know why, but they did. And on the teacher's desk was a flyer speaking about a new training for adaptive PE. And that was, I picked it up and thought, now I really wanted to be a sports teacher. I wanted to get my kids to the Olympics, and be really, really strong and good and win medals. That was my goal. But that flyer caught me in a way, and I connected it to this boy. And really, almost on the same day, I signed up for that training and learned something about the human being, the body-mind connection, and why certain kids are not able to catch a ball. That stunned me. Even in my training where I learned something maybe like this, I kind of overlooked it, I looked for the stuff that worked and not for the stuff that didn't work. And this changed my whole path. I went on to become a physical therapist because I suddenly I had a thirst for knowing, how do we do that when we can't do it? I know how to run really fast, and I know how to teach someone to run fast and all the stuff, but I didn't know what to do to someone and do with someone who had limitations. And these boys had limitations. And the training I did taught me and gave me tools to approach them in a way to make it for them a joy to move and not a burden to move. And I became a healer right there because the training in physical therapy then set me up on stage with people who really had broken shoulders and all kinds of injuries that I learned to treat them for. I studied kinesiology at the time because I really wanted to know how the children's brain develops and how it functions and why not. And came into my first yoga class. I was maybe...
Okay, but hold on here.
Yeah.
Hold on. You're giving us this beautiful chronology, and what I want to know is, what happened to those boys?
Yeah. I would really love to know what happened to him today. I don't know that.
Did you take some of this stuff and engage those boys with this new adaptive approach?
Yes.
So how did they respond to it? That's what I want to know.
Good question. Yes. I actually, after the training, I was not the only one who noticed that. We set up the first adaptive curriculum for these kids. So they would not, because at the time they couldn't really run as fast as the others. So why have them always fall back? And the kids were like enjoying, it was so simple what we did then. Like, I learned that they are really short breathers. At that time, these chubby boys and these kids who fall back were all really short breathers. And we brought in straws, where you actually suck something in, and we blew bubbles. We did things that were so beautiful to do, and everybody could do that they lighted up. They were like, oh, I can do that. Yeah. And kind of, on back roads, around all kinds of curves, I came to them to then go on a balance beam and learn to hold their balance.
And in the process of doing this, they probably also learned how to be deeper breathers.
Yeah. And enjoy, not be afraid of a teacher just because they can't perform.
Right.
But enjoy the teacher who they see as someone who has tools and who is interested in helping them where they are. They picked that up. There was no way around it. They dropped their fear of not being good enough and started to embrace their body in a different way, became better breathers, learned to balance, in the context of what they could do and not in comparison to what the kids who were not challenged can do.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. And I wouldn't be surprised, actually, to hear years later, one or two of those boys may have actually learned how to run.
Yeah.
And run fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what was holding them back was maybe they just hadn't learned how to breathe properly.
Yeah.
And once they learned that, all of a sudden their lungs start opening up, and now the idea of running isn't quite so hard anymore. And they learn. I remember I had a similar situation like that for myself. I had a really hard time as a kid running. And mostly that was because I was exposed to secondhand smoke in my family, and I had asthma and bronchitis and all that kind of stuff all the time. And it wasn't until I was in my, just before I turned 20, I had joined the military. And man, I wanted to be a fighter pilot so bad. And one of the things I had to do was I had to be able to run 1.5 miles I think I had to do it in 10 minutes. Now that's a pretty fast pace. I didn't realize that it was a fast pace, but I just set my goal. I said, man, I had a hard time running one lap around the track. But eventually, by the time I was complete my 4 years of training in military college, by the end, I was doing a 9-minute and 30-second mile and a half.
Good for you.
So, it was something that required me to overcome my own limitation because something else was important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally, that's what I was stunned actually about, that there were kids who couldn't do what I thought everybody else can do, even so I had a training around that, but my focus was different. My focused on the performance part. And when I saw them thrive, I really never went back teaching towards performance. I always learned more and more and got more interested in how do we do what we do and how can we make it work when parts of us don't function like in the book. Right. And it might be the breath, it might be the body, it might be the mind. I mean, then way later now, I have a special needs daughter where body, mind, not soul, but body, mind function is very different. And sometimes I think that boy's name was Ralph. I learned something from Ralph that I needed later to work with my daughter.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. And all the people who come into my life, into my practice, including my oldest student, I always want to mention her. She passed now a few years ago. The oldest student I ever had started yoga at 82.
That's fabulous.
And she came for balance. She had lost her husband, and she said she was on my door. She had made an appointment and she wanted a yoga lesson. Totally afraid to do a yoga lesson, because it's also one thing I want to help loosen the stigma that you have to be flexible and whatever else you have to be in order to do yoga. And that's just not true. Right. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with adaptability in your mind and in your willingness to show up on your mat and find the right teacher. And the lady who came for balance was exactly like this. She had become a short breather.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the beauty. I mean, I had so much experience at the time already. That was about 10 years ago when I met her. She was my student for 5 years, and she actually went along, and I have a balance beam in my studio that I have from my daughter that's low to the ground, because my daughter couldn't come up to a balance beam high. She was afraid and she couldn't hold the balance. I have that balance beam for all my students who have some type of issues with balance. And my student, she had her carpenter make her a balance beam like this so she could practice it every day.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
It brings me so much joy because it's so simple and so beautifully empowering.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. This whole subject really touches me because I know how many times, even today in our so-called enlightened world, do we hear about kids who struggle to do something that most of the other kids find very easy. And then they get ridiculed or shamed or, even bullied, physically bullied, because they are supposedly dumb or they're supposedly inept, or kids will call them retarded even, Yeah. It's really, really surprising to me in this day and age that sort of thing still continues to happen. And I don't know. I really applaud you for finding this, what you call the adaptive physical education approach, to help people understand, okay, maybe you can't do this right now, but you can certainly do this. And as we do this, then you'll get better and we'll move you forward. And eventually you'll be able to do this thing that you wanted to do. And you may not be a world-class athlete at it, but who cares? We can't all be world-class athletes, So I think it's beautiful what you're doing. You're trying to get people to be more in touch with their bodies, how their bodies work, and in particular with their breath. I hear you talk about breath a lot, and I think breath is extremely important.
Yeah, actually,
enough attention to.
Everything we just said and shared and speak about is exactly what brings us to how do we embody mindfulness? How can let's say, I don't even have to have a limitation, but I want to draw people in who think they are whatever they are not. They have injuries, or they're older and they feel like they're out of touch with their bodies. And really, we are not taught anywhere, unless you come to a class like a yoga class or something like this, taught how our body functions and how we can be mindful to our body. And it's really not so difficult. It's just something you want to do. You want to do something that you are interested in learning, because it really starts with the simple practice of pausing and feeling your breath. That's your first act of mindfulness. Anybody can do. Anybody, no matter what the athlete is or how flexible you are, but to pause and land in your body is the very first step for me. To connect to the body and use the tools I then have to feel the body breathe. That's mindfulness in motion already. You are in the present. You are in the present moment with this breath.
Yeah, it's beautiful and it's simple.
It's simple and it's missing.
Yeah.
It's missing. It's missing out in the roots of teaching, in the roots of who we are. Because I'm a sport, as I mentioned earlier. I'm like a tree climber. I'm like fast and I'm competitive. I drop it as I go, and I'm better at it. I'm better at dropping, because it's not serving me well to keep constantly be on the running and on the go and on the doing. It's exhausting. And if we look around, and I'm sure if you ask anybody in the audience listening, most people don't have a relaxed life. They feel like rather on the exhaustion part, or on the part of not knowing what to do with the stuff that comes in their life. I don't even want to say limitations, but they are. Things happen in our life that put the brakes on. An illness, an injury, a loss, a trauma, any kind, puts a brake on.
Right.
And what are we doing when life pauses us or stops us? And what we have been doing is not working in a way as we have been used to. Are we giving up then? What are we doing? That's my inquiry. And there is so much to do. Otherwise, my work, I can work with someone in the wheelchair. I can work with someone who cannot move much. I can work with my daughter, or I can work with autistic people who have a different sense of being in this world. But they all can feel where their body is with the right instruction. And that's where we are. I feel we have to learn to feel our bodies, honor them for having been with us on this journey every single day. We are born with it. It feels everything we have ever felt. Good things and not so good things. Every trauma we went through it's stored in our body. And if we don't release it, it sits there as chronic tension, right? I totally believe that. Or as limitations in the body. And when we start to approach our body with a mindful eye, mindfulness being, bringing our awareness in the present moment. We choose that. Mindfulness not flying by like a bug, and you have it and you own it. We are not.
I want to just kind of come back to something. You said this a couple of times, and I just want to make sure that we land this point, and that is the idea of pausing and just connecting to your breath, which then brings you into your body.
Yeah.
Now I like doing that. I love doing that. Every once in a while, when I'm in the busyness of my day, I like to just stop and not just bring my attention to my breath, but actually take a nice deep breath in and then just let it out. And when I do that, I can feel the motion in my body. Obviously, it works better if I'm standing up, but I don't want to kind of disrupt this setup right now. But if you can do it sitting down too, you don't have to be standing up. And just doing that brings me here now. And it really does bring me back into connection with my body. And of course, my body is always telling me the truth. It's always saying what is right now. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not worried about the future, and it's not dwelling on the past. It's saying this is what is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I ever want to get present, that's the place to do it.
Mm-hmm. I love quotes, I love words, I'm a writer too, so I have all this poesy floating around in my head. To honor our body keeps what's true in view.
There you go.
Isn't that, I picked it up, I didn't create it, but I picked it up somewhere. That's what it is. If we get in touch with our body, like you just said, and I use simple tools sometimes, just to get us moving, not extreme yoga postures. That's for a different scenario. But so we feel the body. And then when we do that, then we are with our body. And the body will say, I do a thing where I teach people, imagine you have cold water on your hands. You just dipped your whole arms in cold waters and now you're shaking it. You make the whole world wet. You can give the water some color. If I want my world to be yellow, I shake everything yellow. Do it for a minute and then pause. It's beautiful. That's for me a miracle. Yeah, because it's invigorating. Your breath will be deeper. And there you have embodied the present moment with a simple shaking of your hands.
Right. And you talked about this. I can't remember the words exactly, but when you bring your attention to your body, that you keep the truth in view, I think it's something along that line.
Yeah.
I think what that really gets to is the idea of honoring our body, which is one of the points that we wanted to cover today, honoring the body. Mm-hmm. Now, honoring the body doesn't mean making the body the most important thing in our life, but it does mean recognizing it for what it does for us and using it for the purposes for which it was intended.
Yeah. Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about how you see honoring the body.
Yeah. Absolutely, the 2 points you said, that this is the vehicle, that holds us together, that lets us live in this world. We take this body to all places we go. We feel with this body, but we also insure this body at times or misuse it. And how can we honor there comes that tricky part. How can we honor the body? How do we do that when we have a stiff shoulder, let's say? Suddenly, we have so many frozen shoulders. So many people have frozen shoulders. Just as an example, it can be anything. And then you come to an idea. The shoulder stays frozen, and you just don't like it. Nobody likes a frozen shoulder. You can have a lot of negative self-talk about that not so great frozen shoulder, and
that's
it's
right.
not. Yeah,
this
and
damn shoulder.
Damn shoulder. Right? Yeah, you want to kind of put a hammer there and hammer the whole pain out of it, and it's just not listening. It's just not doing it. In the practice I do, this is what we, even like with shaking the hands, or just say, I let you reach the arms up to the ceiling, right? Yeah. And then if you have a broken or a shoulder that hurts, just as example, this is not so much fun. This is where you would say, oh my God, I hope she gets me out in a second. I hate that posture. It can go to self-talk about that you don't like the teacher because the teacher keeps you up there. All kinds of stuff goes in your mind. You are not in your body anymore. You're in your mind, ego mind, making up stories about how stiff that shoulder was and how bad that is and how it was different a year ago or yesterday. Being mindful in the present moment, connecting body with movement, has to do with honoring that place that's available for you in the moment. As an example, we work in my practice, it's the Phoenix Rising approach. I teach my students, everybody who comes along, to practice with in mind, sorry, that was a little wrong said, but keep in mind a scale of 10. 10 being like really a lot, 0 being nothing. If you are always on a stretch of 10, like up here, all the way up here for too long, and you're holding your breath, but the teacher still says, stay up there, and you bite your teeth and you're up there, not much later you will be hurting yourself, because, this is a simple pose, but you're overstretching yourself. But if you are always like at a 2 and say, I just can't stand that, you are not showing up, you're not growing either. Nothing happens at a 2 or a A 10 is hurtful, a 2 or 1 is not enough. Find on your scale of 10, find the right amount of stretch, of movement that's possible in the moment with your hurt shoulder. And your hurt shoulder is different than the shoulder that's not hurt. And maybe this is already a 10. And then you might have to say, oh, where can I find a 5 or a 4 and hang out there a little bit and breathe into that. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. Can I share a story here?
This is honoring the body, in where it is in the moment and not where we think it should be.
Yeah, I know. And I want to share a story along that line. Okay, so I told you about how when I was in my 20s, I couldn't really run very much. But by the time I got to my mid 30s, I was actually running quite a bit. And when I was, I think when I was 44, I ran my very first marathon. And I did, I had a very respectable time. I had 3 hours and 39 minutes and 40 seconds. 3:39:04. That was it. Now, you'd think I wouldn't remember a number like that, but let me tell you, I remember everything about that marathon. But here's what's interesting about that. I was essentially doing what you just talked about. I was at a 10 all the time, pushing, so that I could get that marathon done. And after I had completed it, I discovered that I had injured my Achilles tendon in my right foot. Yeah. So guess what? I couldn't run. I couldn't run for about a year. And what did I end up doing? I ended up doing bicycling. And guess what? I was a 10 in bicycling. I had to go 100 miles. I couldn't just go and ride my bike. I had to go 100 miles. It was ridiculous. Well, I eventually got to the point where I injured not only my Achilles tendon, but that worked its way up into my hip, my right hip, and also then down into my knee. So now I can't run at all. Guess what I started doing? My son, my at the time he was probably 25 years old, told me about yoga. And I thought, all right, I guess I'll check it out. I always thought my judgment of yoga was, oh, this is for sissies, So I started doing yoga. And lo and behold, I couldn't stretch at all. I was exactly as you described. I was so tight everywhere in my body that just doing any exercise in yoga hurt everywhere. But I decided, all right, I'm going to just honor my body. And I didn't know that I was doing this at the time. I said, this is where I am. I'm just going to do a little bit every day. I'm going to go like a micrometer further each day. And before I knew it, I was able to stretch as well as most full-blown trained yogis now. And not only that, I did such good work in the stretching that my body has now said, okay, now you can run again. But I don't run at a 10 anymore. Now I'm just running just to kind of go and get some exercise, a little bit of aerobic workout. That's it. So I want to just say everything you said fits exactly with my own story. And once I started honoring my body, things shifted. I want to just thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for letting me share that story.
You're my ideal client. No, it's so true, because I know that too, because I'm a 10. I would love to be a 10 all the time, and it's not serving me well. And the beauty of learning it that way, learning to do yoga that way, if you honor that, what I just said and what you just said, you can't hurt. It's just your mind wanting something else. It's the mind talk that's not in the present moment. And mindfulness is always in the present moment. We become the witness to our practice. We become the witness to how we breathe. And that tells, the body speaks and tells us this is too much and this is too little. Are we honoring that?
Yeah.
Or are we having some ego-driven stuff going on that this is much better to do it this way? I have had so many people say after a practice like this, I have no idea really, I had no idea where my edge is, and I still don't have it, because it takes a little time to discover your edge. And also, like life, it's changing. It's changing with who we are, how we slept, you know, how much we spend time on the computer typing, or maybe we hiked the mountain for the first time in 4 weeks, then our legs hurt a little more. So our edge is different. And with the practice like this, what I love, if you learn that and you're interested in it, you own that. You own the mindfulness part of this practice for you to do it everywhere.
I want to just add to this. This is like anything else. When I first started doing yoga, like I said, everything hurt. There was nothing I could do in yoga that actually felt good. But I knew internally, deep down inside, that this was the right approach, and that I just had to take it slowly. Well, I can tell you now that 13 years later, I can do things that back then, when I started, I said, oh, I'll never be able to do that. That's just not, my body will not do that, period. End of sentence. Well, now, guess what? My body can do that. It's amazing. I think if one person can do it, then probably everybody can do it if you come up to it, you know, at a good pace. So but I'm at the same time, I don't want people to compare themselves to the experts in this series. You know, you're not going to suddenly, you know, today take on and become a world-class mountain climber, you know, just because it's something that you want to do. It's going to take time. So the thing is, yoga is designed for everybody, regardless of your body shape, your how long your arms are, how long your legs are, how long your back is in relation to your leg.
How old you are.
Doesn't care. Anybody can do these poses, and everybody can get benefit from it.
Absolutely.
And guess what? You come into your body and you get into that mindfulness presence state, which is really a beautiful place to be.
I think it's the place to be, to stay well in body, mind, and soul, in everything. It's the place, if you can learn to be in this center of yourself, with what we are talking about. This is, I know we have said we have boundaries on our topic, and we talk about effort and surrender. So how can I stay in my center, connected to what I learn on my yoga mat when life happens? You can, because you start to your body. It's actually not you. It's the brain remembers what you do. The brain remembers when I pause and put my hands on my heart and on my belly, for an example. It remembers she's pausing, she's relaxing, and I breathe deeply. And there are many little things like this that you foster them. You teach yourself them when you practice, and they become yours, and you can use them anywhere you go, because it's beautiful. I love that about this practice. You can own it. It can be your life's companion till you are not able to, well, till you leave this planet.
Yeah, right. And even then, you know, it doesn't matter how old you get either. As you pointed out, I think you and I were talking about, maybe you mentioned this during the show, or maybe you talked about it before, but you said you had this older client.
Yeah, I spoke here, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, that's wonderful. I love seeing older people getting up there and being willing to do some yoga, because it's an amazing tool. It's really an amazing tool. And learning how to breathe again, regardless of how old you are.
Yeah.
Great.
And regardless of any other stuff going on, you know, this is the tool to, I mean, the breath is our life, as simple as it is. I think it's because, I mean, we just breathe, right? I mean, we all breathe, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But how are we breathing, and how fully do we engage with the breath? We can use it not only to have more oxygen and life's energy in our system, but we can also really use it to relax the brain. You know, when life gets on the roller coaster thing, depression, all kinds of burnout situations, the breath can help us back home towards our core.
That's nice. Yeah. Beautiful. Now, I'm wondering if any of our participants have any questions or comments about this topic. Feel free to post anything you like in the chat. We'll do our best to respond to that. But meanwhile, Manuela, this idea of creating flow and joy in our life as a part of this process of mindfulness, How does that work? How do you find that happening in your life? And what can we learn to help ourselves be more connected to joy and flow?
Yeah. It's joy and flow are actually the opposite of being stressed out and exhausted and shrunken in and kind of not wanting to do anything with this life anymore and these people around us. As we embrace the concept of getting in touch with our body, that's just my way of describing the yoga path, and we start moving the body, the parts that are possible to move. We feel more energy in our body. We learn a different awareness about how we walk our life, how we sit, how we stand, how we walk through our life, and what attitude we have. That's equally important than just how we hold our body. What am I thinking about this person? What commenting do I have? Am I a constant commenter about people and feel miserable about it? What is it all? How can I show up to this life in the best way to support how I want to live? And if I want to live with joy, I can't constantly comment on other people's stuff. It's really not about that. It's about me. But if I'm a miserable person because I constantly have something that I'm commenting on, how can we change that? Come back to the body. Learn to be in your body and walk this life through the body that functions in its way. If you have a limitation, it functions with the limitations. If you are gifted with a body and grateful for the body that moves beautifully, then walk like this through this life. Connect to your breath and feel the joy in every moment. That's flow for me.
Yeah.
And I can make it much bigger than that. But I can explain much more about that. But to be able to notice my steps, walk through this room and see the beautiful colors and saying yes to everything I see, that's flow. And I don't have to like it all, I don't have to have all the colors of my choice here. It can be brown, and I don't care much for brown. Who cares? I can say, oh, wow, stay more neutral. Be the observer of your life as you walk through it and enjoy it for that. That brings flow. Then I can do it running, then I can do it in a sun salutation, or if I teach people connecting movement to the breath and starting to not find that as a burden, but feel the pleasure of that, feel the joy of moving like this, and feel the joy sitting here and your breath breathing you. How amazing is this? You cannot not be joyful if you really understand that.
Yeah, and I think there's another piece here, and that is when you're in flow, when you get to that place, then you're in the present moment.
Yeah.
And in the present moment, you can't really be worried about what's happening in the future or dwelling on stuff that happened in the past, because now you're just here. You're just here now. Furthermore, whatever happened in the past or whatever might happen in the future, those are just, the past is gone. It's a memory. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And the future is just something we're projecting out into some arbitrary time. And all we're doing with both of those is distracting ourselves from the present moment.
Absolutely.
And when we distract ourselves, that's when we feel the things like fear and sadness and loss and all those other things that come with it. But when we're in the present moment, what's there to be afraid of? What is there to be worried about? Everything is perfect right here, right now. So why not be in joy?
The present moment is a powerful goddess, is what Goethe said. And I love that. I had to bring that on here. And it's like, in our process, exactly like that. In the Phoenix Rising yoga process, like, why would you have to do so many different things? Because you're learning something each time you do something different. By honoring the body, you create awareness for your body. And here comes, how do you accept your body as it is now? Not how it was yesterday. You learn acceptance. And from acceptance, you can start to discern on, okay, this is the shoulder works like this. How far do I move this today? Why don't I work a little bit with the other shoulder and say, oh, wow, much more movement here. You get to discern what you choose. You have a choice there. It's not you are doomed with something. You get to choose on how you want to be with what you have. And along this comes that beautiful practice of discovering your truths. It's really not happening in a sentence, and it's not happening in a show or in a class, but to discover your truths in how you do what you do can happen on your yoga mat.
Exactly.
And bring this truth in flow with the body you have, with who you are. This is the flow you are looking for. This is bliss. I know how that feels like, and I don't want to not be without it. I want to honor having been able to create this for myself and for others.
I just want to honor Anne here for her comment. She says, I live getting around in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. Breathing and stretching while keeping in mind the joy of my breath makes all the difference in my days. So obviously what you just said touched her and got her to speak up. I think that's fabulous. And thank you, Anne, for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Anne. Hello, Anne. I know, Anne. I love that you said that because, I didn't even see you are here. But I mean, what example is this that we can do that no matter what our body is like? It's a joy to be connected to this powerful aliveness we have. And that's what it's about for me, to stay awake, mindfulness and any word you want to use for that. I do not want to walk around sleepwalking and be guided by autopilot behavior without having a clue where your feet are or where your hands are or how you touch this beautiful glass here and how it goes to your lips. Why not celebrate it? Not that I not celebrate it every day. Sometimes I'm thirsty and whoops, it goes. But I do. I'm a human being. But then I honor that piece here and I put it down with reference, knowing not everybody has a glass to drink beautiful fresh water from. That's a sense of gratitude we can have towards what we have in the body and in our life.
Well, I think what Anne said kind of brought up for me the question of honoring boundaries. Mm-hmm. Do I have boundaries and do I honor them? Or do I step over boundaries of other people? Or do I allow people to step over my boundaries? That's a great topic unto itself. And Absolutely. I think it's relevant to this particular discussion. How do we honor our boundaries in such a way that we are still being respectful of other people?
Yeah. And respectful to our needs. So we are not, there are two planes. I mean, I teach boundary workshops. They are can be 6 weeks long, because that's really an issue. And I always think it's more for women, but I'm not a man, then I can't speak for men. But many women come into my work around, that people overstep the boundaries, that we are always in the doing mode. We are doing too much while not respecting our boundaries. Because for me, to honor my boundaries is self-love. I need that. I need to be like self-care. I call it sacred self-care. That means I'm doing something for myself first, so I'm well enough to do it for others. This is setting a boundary. This is me, my time. And I honor that not because I'm selfish, but because I need to, so I can help others. I'm of no help to anybody if I'm exhausted. And how to, and the boundary thing, the boundary issue, for us, I always say when I work with boundaries, the physical world gives us great examples. We have walls, we have flowers, we have windows, we have doors. If I look at that window there, it says this room ends here and the next room begins. Pretty clear, right? Mm-hmm. If this is my neighbor, then I honor. I'm not looking over there. If he doesn't like it, then okay, it's his business. But we don't have that. We don't have that physical boundary.
Right, not beyond the physical limitations of the end of my hand, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but how far, do I let people come towards my place, my zone, my circle? That's what I work on. I have a practice where we do a swing like this. You can do it even seated with the elbows, and you can have it with your hands flying. And there is a meditation going along where I instruct and let people draw a boundary, a circle around them. with the fingertips. And you can choose a color. I'm a color girl. I like color, so I choose a blue circle around myself. And then when we pause, we can visualize and feel the circle we drew around ourselves. I call it my sacred space. Inside this circle, that's me. It belongs to Manuela. This is where I love myself, where I take care of myself, where I honor myself and listen to myself. Only whom I invite can step over that circle. Very few people. I choose when I step out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that boundary needs to be flexible. You know, sometimes in sickness, my family is not well right now. I need to be more out there than I like to, but they need me. But I can come back to my chair and feel my circle and be in this space for a breath. I can put my breath into this circle all around and remember, this is who I am.
Nice.
And from here, I serve.
Yeah, there's a funny thing about boundaries that I've learned in my life. Well, actually, there's a bunch of different aspects to it, but
yeah,
you kind of alluded to it in your explanation. But here's an example that I would like to give. You know, as I'm approaching someone, it's not always clear to me when I have gone past an acceptable boundary. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can be approaching, everything feels good. All of a sudden, there's an energy shift, and I realize, oh, I've gone a little too far, and now I can back out. Similarly, I notice for myself, I'm pretty open. I like to have people, approach me and stuff. But certain kinds of energy, I feel, whoa, that's not right for me. I feel like I want to push back. And I say, whoa, I'm sorry, can you just take a little bit of a step back, please? Mm-hmm. So I noticed that this idea of boundaries seems to shift and move depending on what kind of energy I'm exposed to, how I'm showing up or how I'm feeling. All of these things are contributing factors to my boundaries. And so they're shifting and they're changing and they're constantly moving. And when I say no today to something, I might say yes to it 5 minutes later. Mm-hmm. Vice versa. If I say yes to it now, I might say no to it 5 minutes later. So that's a beautiful way to just remember that your boundary is not a real thing. It's just something that you experience in the moment. And that's why it's important to be present. What's my boundary right now? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's like always, if life flows and only happy people are around me, I have an easy time doing that all. But it's extremely important when we run into situations that are not easy. Like we all have people in life I have people in my life I could care less for, but I have them as family members in my life and I need to be with them. It's extremely helpful to know where I begin or end and where I let them come to and not. And that makes me happy to be older. I didn't know that as a young woman. I had people step over it. I wanted to please. I wanted to be loved by everybody because I hadn't learned that. And it didn't serve me well. What serves me well is a sense of knowing where I end and begin and accepting that this person out there that is triggering me is doing the best she can, even though I can't stand what she's doing. But I don't have to be a bitch because she is one.
Right. Yeah.
Not so easy, but it works. It's not, I don't want to have people bring me down to their level if this is the level I don't want to be. My boundary helps me with this. That
Beautiful.
that I envision that for me and say this, nobody gets me here.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Manuela, I don't know if you noticed, but we've been going for almost an hour here. And it's been an awesome conversation. I've been having a great time here. I'm just wondering, is there something you'd like to share as maybe a little bit of a process that people can take away from this and start, building a practice out of it in their life?
Yeah, lots of things, of course, but I just looked at the time too. The concept, which would be another session to have, of effort and surrender, right?
Can you say that again? I didn't quite catch that.
The concept of effort and surrender.
Oh, effort and surrender. Okay.
Right. Meaning bringing it back to what I would like to pass on. thinking of when we are in life situation, on our yoga mat or not, wherever we are, on what edge am I on a scale of 10? How far do I lean into something to make it work? Is it helpful to me? Is it a 10? Why not back up? Or are you on the couch eating potato chips and you're not getting your legs up the mountain and you should? That's equally not helping.
Then, come on, we all do it.
Yeah, at times, I do it at times, but if you are 99% couch potato, if you're missing energy, if you're missing being engaged in life, you've got to change that and bring your level 1 to a middle place. Right. In general, the scale, the edge from 10 being too much, 1 not being enough. I have a thing I like to share. Think if you are eating something, if you are cooking, you know even better. The stew tastes great with the right amount of salt and pepper. It tastes yucky if it's too salty and you forget it and you don't eat it if it tastes like nothing. Get the right amount of salt and pepper in your movements, in your presence, to your breath. On a scale of 10, if I'm breathing, because now someone talked about breathing and I'm breathing till I'm dizzy, I'm on a 10 and I'm not honoring.
Yeah, right.
So do it with moderation.
Is bringing balance into life.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. Is that that's what you mean, right?
That's better said. Bringing balance in your life by kind of looking. I like the concept of the edge for me because I use it a lot. How much do I lean out into that situation? Is it needed? And if it's needed because people are sick, then yes, then you need to do that, of course. But if it's not needed and it's just a habit of you leaning too far out, helper syndrome, lean back in. If you're never moving your body or never rolling your shoulders or flipping your hands, maybe you start doing this, If you're always on a 10 running, like you just explained it, maybe you can also pause a little bit. And there's the last thing I want to say that is actually really the most important one. Learn to pause. Pause, take a breath. Our soul likes slowness.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And not running and doing and doing and doing. We cannot know how we feel if we are on the constant doing mode. Let's come back to be more present and have 10 times a day where you pause and breathe. 3 breaths, 1 minute, 10 minutes, self-love.
Nice. That's beautiful.
Thank
you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
Manuela. It's been a real pleasure, and I've had a lot of fun here. How has it been for you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it and I loved the questions, and I would actually kind of really want to get the audience on here too and see everybody engage. But I know this is not what we can do, but I appreciate everybody coming on here and joining and being with us. I loved when questions come, then answers arise and thought processes get kicked in and we learn something about each other as we go. And that's what conversation and being together is about.
That's right. Yeah.
Together. I love that.
Life mastery is about too. So thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. Thank you again for being on the show. And
thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. It's been just been a real pleasure to have you here. I want to remind you that you can watch recordings of this and all other shows that I have on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. In a few hours after the show is over, you're going to receive an email with a link to a feedback page, and I would really request that you take a few minutes to write us a heartfelt, authentic 5-star review, so that we can encourage other people to join this show in future episodes. And finally, I just want to remind you all of my life mastery mantra, and I'm encouraging you to use this every day. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. Take that and mix it in with your embodied mindfulness practice and let that really soup up your day. Until we meet again, I'm David McLeod, your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. See you next time here on Life Mastery TV. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.